Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. A manhunt is underway for a gunman suspected of fatally shooting the CEO of United Healthcare. 50-year-old Brian Thompson was killed early Wednesday morning in Midtown Manhattan. The health insurance executive was walking into a Hilton hotel for a corporate event when he was gunned down.
Pause. We've all seen this headline by now. It's everywhere. But here's what the news isn't telling you. Did you know that the CEO was being sued for allegedly creating an AI system that blocked 90% of insurance claims? How far should AI go in controlling critical infrastructure? And where do we draw the line between innovation and exploitation? To dive into these questions, we've invited 6 students from our university to engage in multiple prompts surrounding critical infrastructure. Here's how it works. Those who disagree with the prompt will sit on the left side of the screen, while those who agree will sit on the right. They'll debate, share thoughts, and challenge each other's views. At the end of each section, participants will have the chance to switch sides and explain why they've changed their perspective. It's all about exploring the complexities of AI in critical infrastructure and fostering thought-provoking discussions.
Should AI be trusted to make critical healthcare decisions, given concerns highlighted by the United Health lawsuit over alleged improper denials of treatment compensation? Please take your seats.
Well, yeah, there's the real reason it's a lawsuit, right? Because it's been deemed that the practices, 90% of cases are denied by AI. I don't know the specifics of the case, but I think a system like that, if it's 90%, most likely there was no human intervention, no human sort of overview of that. And I think obviously the situation for insurance companies and medical companies in America is quite a profiteering business, but still, I think AI definitely was used quite maliciously in that situation. And for insurance, where it's a lot more about the human element, right? It's about the patient and their not just their data, but their story as well, which I think AI sort of misses quite easily and can be abused with.
To interject here, if we're going to talk about this specific case, I think this is an issue of if you have bad inputs and bad parameters for your decision making, then you will get bad results. I'm certain that the records eventually of the case will show that there has been some manipulation in terms of programming the actual model to make these biased decisions. So rather than, I think, this case and in general, we should be judging based on the intentions and the results of malicious actors rather than using AI to assist in that decision-making process itself. AI is wonderful when it comes to sorting through large amounts of information, and if you give it the right decision-making parameters, if you allow it to incorporate some of that human element and certainly human overview and having someone sign off on that decision, I don't think it's controversial to say that that should be part of that process. But there's nothing inherently about AI that will make it make these wrong decisions on a consistent basis.
Well, to interject there, I think that what you're saying is quite correct, but I think you're maybe missing the point just a little bit. I think that the AI is not the problem here, but it is the human element. And I think that we should not be able to trust or shouldn't trust large corporations dealing or doing their business with AI like they are right now. And this case might just be an example of how that could go wrong in the future, because we all know that the human element is very much needed in here. It's a case-by-case basis, and just having these AIs sort through large data sets might just set up a future where these problems might become larger, and you're putting a real lot of trust in these big corporations that are using this very experimental and very new tool while dealing with people's livelihoods. So I think that, yes, it could be used in certain cases and in certain industries, but maybe insurance is not the right one to do it.
Yeah, well, as it was mentioned in the law case, 1 in 9 people were denied, accepted actually, the insurance money. So it was just a way of the company to just be corrupted and just deny the money to people. So generally, speaking about the introduction of AI to healthcare, is it beneficial? First of all, numerous times, like it was already proved by multiple researchers that using AI in order to find certain medical illnesses, some kind of chronic diseases or something like that, it helps and it prevents it in 90% cases. Also, it is fast, it's accurate. Sure, there are some issues with that, but that's why we're still developing in this kind of topic. AI is every single day improves. There are new models that come out and all that. So yeah, generally speaking, I think AI is beneficial for healthcare. It only the issue is that like there are some people that are going to use it for a bad cause. So that's how it should be controlled. That's how it was like shown to the public in this case.
Well, if I can interject again, firstly, yes, for healthcare and for issues like sorting through maybe medical files or sorting through finding diseases, yes, it's beneficial and it should be used. But again, we're talking about the matter of insurance, and the difficulty of insurance is that a small percentage of malpractice being accepted should not be the case, because it is definitely dealing with people's livelihoods and dealing with a lot of money for some people. And if you have, let's say, a 2% error margin for a company that has millions of insurances and has to deal with a lot of these cases, you still have the livelihoods of thousands of people that can potentially be destroyed by a new tool that has not been like used on this large of an audience before. So I think that accepting the small issues that could arise is still not acceptable in the larger frame, because it is a case-by-case basis and you need to protect everyone and not only the smallest or like the biggest majority. You can't ignore the minority in this one.
You know, also just like the insurance company. I mean, United Health is huge. Like it is $1 billion company. I think the only reason they would use AI is to cut costs. That sort of, and insurance is one of those areas in society where it, like as said, it is really about the people and not numbers on a screen. So I think it's also just a case of like AI shouldn't be used in every sector of human life, because in some cases you need the human interaction, you know? Like you can review it, but also like AI is not born with emotions. You know, AI is programmed and AI can be manipulated, it can be designed with bias, the data can be biased. I think it's a lot safer to stick with the human element for something as critical as insurance, because that affects, I would say, most people in the developed world nowadays. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that you just mentioned that like AI does not have emotions and like all of this, like multiple things, but I don't think it's necessary for AI to have emotions towards people that experiencing some kind of problems to give the money, for example, like insurance companies. Because if a human being is going to be acting according to their emotions, then the companies are just going to be losing money, like a lot of them. Like, oh, this person is suffering from X disease, I'm feeling so bad about them, so let me just give them like millions of dollars to just make them feel better. So having emotions is like not a good part for decision making in this kind of case. But yeah, and as it was mentioned in the law case, AI was just used in order to decline, and it was just like acting on a certain program that was set up by the programmer, like to deny 8 people and give the insurance money to another person. In this case, it just was a usage of AI in a bad way. And yeah, generally speaking, if we don't use AI for bad cause, it's good for us.
Hi, I'm Lucas. I'm in my second year for International European Law with a specialization in tech track. And I find this topic really interesting because I come from a third world country where this isn't really much of a discussion. So being able to share a unique experience is always exciting for me.
Thank you so much. The 7 minutes have been finished. If you think that your opinion has changed, I would say that you move to the other side right now and give a short explanation as to why it has.
So, the reason why I'm moving to this side is because I think we're working with two different paradigms. I think the motivations and the reasoning that belong to that side have more to do with the short-term implications. So right now, it's not to be trusted, it's not good enough, it's so on and so forth. And on this side, I feel like there's a lot more discussion about the potential of it. So hypothetically, in a perfect world, it could work. And so the reason why I moved is just to show that I kind of agree with both. Like I definitely agree with short term, it doesn't work. And I don't see how it will work in any way in the short term without a human interaction, even through PR issues, so on and so forth. But I do see the potential of the long term of it, because of all the points that you guys raised, of it working. Yeah. Hello everyone, I'm Davide. I'm passionate about the future of AI, not just the long-term future, but also the short-term future and its consequences. I am a third-year bachelor student from the AI program, and yeah, that's about it.
AI should be used in critical infrastructure because humans are inherently biased.
I think to kick this off, we're set with a very general setting. But if we extrapolate this to mean like in different forms of critical infrastructure, I reckon that AI does have a role. Maybe also outside of the fact that human beings are biased, AI is a huge force multiplier for any sort of good inputs you give it, as long as you let it operate within the same parameters. Say you have interesting research that goes into AI helping control electricity grids. Say in the case of the Netherlands, we have a huge issue where there is not enough grid capacity to handle peak demand. So you have a lot of inputs, a lot of demand coming from both electricity suppliers and electricity consumers. But if you have devices that can be linked to this active grid usage capacity, that way you can say you could charge your electric car during off hours where electricity would be both cheaper because there is less demand, and it will be less taxing on the grid. And in such a way, for instance, you can both save a lot of money, you remove the human element, and with that, you don't even introduce an extra level of risk.
Well, the thing is about this question is we're talking about here about the bias. Just because like humans have bias, we need to use AI. Well, if we're speaking in the borders of this question, then I highly disagree with it, because well, humans introduce bias, then AI is going to be also biased, because when humans are creating the AI, they're going to be developing according to their needs and their thoughts and the data sets, and all of these could be also biased. So at the end, we have biased AI as well that's not acting the way how it's supposed to be. Again, I'm not against usage of AI, but in terms of this question, just because humans are biased, AI should be used. I don't see a point in here.
Adding to this, I really wonder if there's any way in which prompts could be given to an AI without introducing human bias, because the one that operates the AI will always be a human, as far as I know. I don't know if it's possible to make an AI that creates prompts for other AI, which could maybe eliminate some of this bias, and if there's a process into that. But when it comes to critical infrastructure and the dangers of human bias, there are many fail-safes in place that are already dealing with computers, not necessarily AI, but some sort of algorithm. And I would say that maybe introducing AI there could be a smart thing, but completely replacing the human aspect of it would be dangerous, because a famous example of that might be the errors that we're giving in nuclear prevention, like nuclear warnings. So you have this sensor that malfunctions and goes off, and then one country thinks hundreds of bombs are being dropped or launched their way, and it has time and time again been the human factor that has thought logically and stopped this. We all know about the guy in the submarine that pressed the button. But there are more or lesser known stories about a warning system malfunctioning, and this one person, this one sergeant, just basically maybe not, but probably stopping World War III in its tracks. And I think that solely relying on AI in those very dangerous situations can be very dangerous.
I also wanted to add up to a point that was made earlier about, just because human bias exists, we shouldn't use AI, because guess what? Humans make AI and there could be bias in that. I think one really big aspect that a lot of people are also missing is that the data that is used to train AI systems are sometimes taken up from open source platforms, which means that you could also have massive polarization. And it is something that is seen in migration systems that actually use AI, and there have been tons and tons of research on it about how it has raised critical human right implications for, refugees or people coming in that are being judged by these AI systems that are literally, the data being used to train them is from social media platforms or just from open source data. A similar aspect could even be, like, you can even see it in digital forensics, how difficult it would be to kind of, use AI in a criminal trial, which has happened before, and see it kind of backfire because the information that is being used to kind of train it is, again, relying primarily on open source data, which inherently also has bias, but perhaps that bias is a lot more polarized than an individual human's bias. Do you guys get what I'm kind of getting to?
And I think we shouldn't be arguing necessarily with the facts here. There are incredible concerns about things like predictive policing, about these migration systems. But then let us remind ourselves that this bias was produced in a human social context, in one where we were applying group thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And to an extent, AI could help simply in terms of trying to creatively guide people around certain questions. Of course, like this is experimental, and this is where maybe you have generative prompts that would help you think about whether you've checked all of your boxes. Like that's one thing where you could be introducing it without necessarily affecting your decision loop. Simply have extra questions being generated creatively by, say, a secure generative AI platform. But like still, of course, like I don't think any of us can agree that like systematic bias in policing, if you have the systematic data bias, of course, things will go wrong. But then again, we arrive at an issue where it's if you have bad data and biases coming in, like AI won't necessarily make them good, but then these errors have existed already before AI existed, and these errors will be made even if we don't use AI. So the question is, rather than what tools can we use, and I believe AI is one of them, to help us make such mistakes, and taking the longer view, what are ways we can use where the benefits outweigh the risks? Because there are always risks involved. I don't mean to disagree with that. But if we find a way in which to incorporate a healthy risk, and we also evaluate the risk of not using these tools, because that also carries a risk, then you can come to a more balanced conclusion and also integrate AI in some sections of your infrastructure.
All right, 7 minutes has passed. If you have changed your opinion, then you're very welcome to switch to the other side.
Would you want to explain on why some of your opinions have not changed, even though you've heard the other side?
Well, I just sort of like a sort of quick overview of it that, sure, that the bias can exist in the data, it can exist with the architect of the model itself, and I think purely it's not fair to say such a blanket statement like that, because sure, I mean, all humans are biased in their own way, so and some you could say relatively aren't, and then you can then argue, okay, but then some AI models aren't biased. But in the real world, we have levels of accountability. We have, I mean, you can see the civil rights movement in America, where they created so many safeguards to sort of try to protect from bias. So even though it still does happen, it happens less frequently. But with an AI model can make decisions based on biases with little to no accountability. But that, of course, depends on the structure of it. But yeah.
Anyone else want to say something?
Yeah, I think that sure, maybe if we do implement it even in other aspects of infrastructure, it could work out, but I still do not think that AI is regulated enough for there to be enough safeguards for us to implement it into different sectors of infrastructure. But primarily, I am a little bit more biased towards how I think of AI's impact when it comes to the justice system, the criminal system. The instances that we have seen have been grave. So it also, and the fact that, again, enough safeguards do not exist. The legislation that is coming out on AI is still relatively new. It is still quite experimental. I don't see how we could, at least in the short term, I do not see how we can integrate it into critical infrastructure. And I think in terms of efficiency might help in the long term, but I still do not know if that is a good enough reason for us to create that blanket statement being like, yeah, that's the solution. So yeah.
To maybe add to this, for me, I am really in the center of this. Yes, your point about it being, or the pluses being there is a good point, but adding to that, I think that my earlier statement about every minor error still being too grave maybe to accept still stands here. And also when it comes to critical infrastructure, I think with the legislation, critical infrastructure really is an international issue. Like when you come pipelines, for example, or internet lines, they go through multiple countries, through multiple borders, and the way in which many of these things are regulated internationally has not been discussed yet with AI. And I think that there is also a real question about if there will be any international forum or in any international way that maybe the EU will do it, but major other countries won't. So trusting on AI to not cock up there is maybe a bit too ambitious, and I think that we should really focus on trying to improve the models first before that.
Hello, I'm Konstantin. I'm very much passionate about this subject because I'm quite curious to see how AI has its effects in the cyber domain and how it's going to affect our society, and also how we will develop ways to govern it without compromising on our core values. I have a background in economics and international security.
I think that AI has the potential to educate students just as effectively as the traditional university lecture model. You see that?
Well, if you don't mind me to start, I just want to share my own experience with using AI. So not so far ago, I was studying for a certain course in my for a test, and I was really having a hard time to understand certain things, certain topics. So I decided to use the ChatGPT. I uploaded the entire document, the entire book, and put the topics that I need to study that I didn't understand, and I asked it to teach me. And ChatGPT was doing really great. It was going through like one single topic, then giving me some kind of sort of explanation of what is it about, and then gave me some exercises. And then it asked me to solve them. I solved them, and then according to that, it showed me the entire process of solving certain things. And then at the end, it told me it's true or incorrect, and if it's true, then good job, we can make another one more complex. If not, then let's do another one. And then, yeah, this way I was doing it for multiple hours. It was the first time when I was actually enjoying studying for this course. So yeah, it was pretty entertaining, especially when you try to engage into the conversation with it, and it adjusts that it's put certain emojis, let's say, or being like positive. Then it's like nice, you know, it's like you're talking to a person and it understands you and helps you to do that. So yeah, at the end, I did really great. So.
To build quickly on top of that, if this is what we can achieve now, I think imagining what we can achieve, I'd say 10 years, but with AI, the scale is much shorter. I'd say even 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, is I think would beat traditional education. What would you call it? Methods, by far.
I get your point. It was really difficult kind of sitting on this side because I am also a big ChatGPT loyalist. But at the same time, I do believe that certain disciplines, traditional university lectures, certain disciplines are teaching you a certain way to think. That I don't believe ChatGPT or generative AI can train us to do yet. Potentially, maybe in the future. But as of now, the way AI, especially generative AI, how it's working is that every single time you give it a prompt, it is giving you there's a pattern to the answers it gives you. It is very predictable. And with certain disciplines, that can be very, very useful. But it does not give you the skills that traditional university lectures, assignments, whatever, that are normally taught to us. These skills that we acquire from them are much more active, are much more, I guess, in a way, tangible compared to AI. AI right now, because it is such a set, uniform pattern, it cannot train you to think a certain way. For example, when it comes to my discipline, law, I've used ChatGPT multiple times to kind of like get through my lectures. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. But at the same time, it really did end up messing me over at the end, because when I look at my peers who actually followed the traditional path, they have these skills to think more like a lawyer compared to me in certain courses.
I actually have a question and a point building on what you're saying. I want to say the point first because I think I'll forget. So, in like what specific skills and these sorts of things are you talking about? Like, I feel like your peers might have done better also because the system by which they're being tested on is the one that's optimized for the content that is created, and that's obvious, right? But at the same time, I would argue that it does help with that too, at least in my personal domain, which is AI. I do see how systems right now could struggle a lot with law, especially because we're talking about articles and they're very long, and it's quite hard for current technologies to keep track of all the information because of inherently the way they work. But I don't see this being a problem even 2 years from now, and even then I still don't understand which particular skills you're talking about, because every skill that I can think of could be like, even the exercises he was mentioning, like practical experience, can be done that way.
So surprisingly enough, with articles, it's actually great.
Oh, okay, there you go.
It works perfectly fine. You know, finding certain articles, what does this article mean? What was the court's judgment in this? Blah, 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 blah. It can give you that sequence of like what kind of tests they use, all of that. It's very laid out to you in a straightforward manner. But when it comes to exercises, or the kind of skills I'm talking about are more critical skills that you really have to step into the shoes of a certain kind of judge acting in a certain kind of philosophical dimension of law. That's a bit tricky.
How does AI prevent you from doing that?
In the sense that, for example, if I am primarily relying on AI to prepare for my exams or just gain an understanding of the course, I cannot rely on it to actually make me completely understand the court's judgment properly. It can give me an outline of, okay, this was a test that they used, but it does not give me a proper, like, at least off the bat. See, I do believe that if I give it a very specific kind of prompt and keep tweaking it, it would lead me to that. But I'm also thinking, for a general lay audience, for a general person that is just trying to access AI to get access to a certain course, how many attempts to a new prompt are you going to give for it to give you your desired result that would help you think a certain way, that would help you get to that, for it to like, I don't know, give you certain exercises. I think it's a very trial and error kind of thing. You
Yeah.
know?
At the same time, I don't think it's entirely fair, and I can tell you why. Because you're sort of expecting this machine to just give you what you want first, like giving it almost zero information. First of all, it doesn't know that you are a tech lawyer student of the which year? Second year tech law student. Doesn't know anything about that. Doesn't know that you're studying at the RUG for a specific class. Doesn't know all of this context. It's just missing it completely. And you are still expecting it, giving the little resources that you're giving it, to fully answer and prepare you for an exam that it's not even aware of. So that's why I think it's not a fair comparison that you're making. Try giving it all the resources, even in one prompt. Try giving it all the resources. And by the way, here we're only talking about GPT specifically. Like we could be talking ages about different approaches that you could use. Even like if we're talking about AI in education, entire curriculums entirely designed by AI, and that's where the context, you don't even have to pass it because it knows what you're talking about because it made the curriculum. So yeah, I think it's a great tool.
Thank you, guys. We'll have to cut you here, but after discussing this, if anyone has changed their opinion, please feel free to change sides.
Fair enough.
Damn, wait.
I didn't even.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I should say no.
Okay.
Would you like to share why?
Well, for me, I'm still on the fence and in the middle, as always. But the way I had mainly this argument to you two, I got convinced by you because I feel like the human element and maybe the specific biases that are needed for certain, the things we learn for, so like for certain jobs or certain fields, might be missing in AI. And when using AI, of course, AI is a great tool, and I feel that's why I was there. I feel like it could break open new ways of education, because I feel like higher education is very closed off, and you need to spend a lot of money to gain the resources that you actually need to understand the way of thinking of people in your field. But I feel like that way of thinking is there for a reason. There's a reason why certain fields have certain schools of thought, and why one uni teaches something different than another uni. So having a standardized AI trying to teach this to everyone in an entire nation or everyone in an entire field is just not convincing for me. And I feel like
I don't think that was the like I think this is, I think right now with your argument you're more focusing on one example, but I just want to make clear that's not the example at least I personally had in mind when I sat this way. Like I'm not saying there should be one AI teaching everybody everything. That's not what I have in mind. I'm saying like if you could make a GPT that basically copies everything that is done at the RUG and improve it a little bit and just serve it to you and teach you, it would do a good job. That's all I'm saying.
Then I would still say that is a snapshot of time, and let's just say this tool copies everything from the RUG, teaches like a lecturer would teach from the RUG. You still have that personal note not in there, because the RUG is such a multifaceted institution, and trying to take everything from all the places and put it in one course wouldn't cut it for me. I think that having that...
I still don't think we're talking about the same thing.
But the logic here, I think, goes a bit in circles, because then I think that the real issue we're trying to address is critical thinking skills, which will be
that's something
major,
that's very interesting.
which is a major skill you will need if you're going to use AI. But then how do you develop that if you don't have it? You can't really ask AI without knowing what critical thinking knows like. So you need to have that skill in order for AI to teach you that skill. Same with the context-specific knowledge. And you can't do that. So that's where I see the main limitation, and that's where, at the very least, your argument, even if it's very much like, even if it has a lot of side merits, like it just doesn't hold logically.
I see what you mean. I think let me try to re-explain it. I think what you're saying is, unless you know what you're doing, it's not going to tell you what to do. So, for instance, if you get given assignments, it's like self-learning versus getting assignments from someone, right? That's where you're sort of going. I see your point. But I think again you're comparing an approach where the only interaction you have with it is via this again self-learning approach. If this, I'm not saying take GPT. I'm saying take an ideal system like GPT, where you get given coursework and whatever works from the traditional system, but it's just delivered through AI systems, and you basically it's like getting a university degree, minus the networking, which I think is really bad. However, with the additional value, and so this goes against us in a way, but with the additional value of having a personal tutor at any time. You can ask it even the dumbest questions. You're not in a room with 150 people who will make fun of you, you know? I say this from personal experience. But you can ask it whatever you want. You can talk to it for hours upon hours upon hours without worrying about how much time there is, and the professor needs to do something else and focus on something else, so on and so forth. So I think that's the core advantage of that system. Then everything around it you can change. But the core advantage is having a catered learning experience.
Hi, I'm Jordan. I'm a second year Bachelor International Relations student, and I'm passionate about this topic because I feel like AI is a very dangerous but also very important tool that we can use in the future, and it has implications worldwide, and I feel like there should be more research done on it and more collaboration on it in regulation and in laws.
AI significantly increases the risk of cyber attacks.
If I can start off, for me this is again a topic which I would say I don't know a lot about, but I am very interested to hear sides from or arguments from both sides. For me, my main concern is that it has been established that we have an rising increase in cyber warfare all over the world, and if you focus on the West, there's an increase in, you say it, focus on critical infrastructure, also known as hybrid warfare. And I don't know how resistant AI would be to this threat, and I don't know how many backdoors there would be for AI in this. So my main concern is that it would potentially increase the dangers of foreign interference in critical infrastructure.
I'm a little confused. Wait, so is that on our side?
No,
It would increase cybersecurity threats, right?
yes. So
That's
So then you're.
then
you're
right?
I don't
Then you
decide.
should be
Okay.
on-
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you guys disagree? Let's start over. Yeah.
Obviously, cyber attacks have been happening before AI was even invented, and I sort of thought about the cons initially. So obviously, phishing becomes easier because our old traditional methods of catching those was purely just poor grammar, like simple things like that. But obviously, AI makes that a little more difficult. Malware as well will gradually get better and better because ChatGPT or other simple AI models can write code at incredible speeds. But I think that the positives outweigh them because AI can be used for threat hunting, for example, or for playbooks, or I think there are so many more applicational abilities that AI can have because this isn't an area that bias can have a huge effect because it is purely about looking for exceptions and looking for anomalies and outliers. Like that's why we use machine learning already in cybersecurity, because of this ability to be able to cover huge amounts of data sets and be able to summarize them and to be able to find the issues with them. So I don't think the negatives of it outweigh the possible gain that they can have.
I feel that in terms of the empirics, sadly, are not very much favorable to the disagreeing side, because as much as, yes, AI is excellent when it comes to red teaming, when it comes to helping identify threats, It can write code, even if it isn't always secure. But the issue is, like, in the cyber domain, there is always an offensive advantage. When you put a piece of code out there, you don't know, like, there's plenty of unknown unknowns in terms of vulnerabilities that you have. And whenever you put a product out there will be vulnerabilities that, like, even the best coders haven't discovered, and they will be exposed at some point. AI can help with that. And simply by virtue of the field having such a bias towards the offense, and then you run into the issues of the weakest links, also the human factor of human susceptibility to various angles of attack, where AI can be very useful on the offensive side, is you're then really having a race to the bottom where it's rather clear that those actors who really want to disrupt can use AI to induce many more angles of attack than it is possible to cover as a defender. So as a defender, you're always chasing the newest brand of attack, be it malware, be it scripts, be it phishing, regular or spear phishing. So I'm very sad to say that I think really, as much as it has merits, like, you can't outweigh the various different risks that AI imposes.
Hello everyone, I'm Andrei. I'm the first year of bachelor's in artificial intelligence, and I'm really interested in passionate about this topic because it helped me and saved me during my essays writing days. Well, the thing is, for me, I believe that no matter what, there is still going to be the same level of cyber security threats. Like, for example, like before the AI was introduced, right? We had like malware that was literally frying the computers and then like stealing data and all of that. But people still develop certain solutions to prevent this kind of things to happen in the future. So what I believe is that moving forward with the time, we're gonna have kind of the same kind of issue because, well, cyber attacks like still happen like every single day probably, but it's gonna be the same level as in the next 30 years. Maybe perhaps at some point there is gonna be some kind of solution that's gonna oversee the future, I'd say, of the future possible attacks that could happen on certain things. So yeah, I just believe that AI is just basically going to be fighting like in some kind of video game, pushing like the lasers, and it's just going to be either to the left or to the right who's winning. But it's never going to come to the end point to completely eliminate one of the sides.
I think if we take a snapshot of what AI can help with in terms of cybersecurity right now and the defenses against it, AI wins by AI in terms of cyber attacks wins by a big amount, and that's because an average, not even an average programmer, even a bad programmer could use it to, and we're talking more about uncensored AI because of course GPT has guardrails on it. It could easily be used to program these sorts of things. Maybe not working perfectly initially, but getting there with a few tries, fixing a few things. So imagine that proportion, that new proportion of people that now have access to potentially to a tool that can do harm versus the defenses against it. How it's easy to build these tools, but then protecting against them, like, I'm not talking about anything revolutionary. I'm talking about things that we already know about. Like, I don't see how AI would help in protecting as much.
Well, the thing is that, like, if there was some kind of malware that was like the superior over everything, then we were probably experiencing already now. But now we're living, and I don't think we had some kind of big issue regarding some kind of cyber attack. The only one thing that like reminds me is the down of the Windows update, but that was not like related to the malware attack or whatever.
No, that was just a CrowdStrike.
Yeah.
I think like
Yeah.
a mistake in their own program.
Yeah. Again, I want to make this clear. I'm talking quantity over quality. I'm not talking about the quality of the malware, so it being this revolutionary thing. I'm talking about the people making it. There's many more. You have many more people making existing ones. And if you have many more people doing it, there's a much bigger chance of finding that one person that doesn't have, I don't know, the antivirus installed or this or that, or has vulnerabilities open. It just opens a new field, I think.
But I think that's entirely double-sided. You can give the exact same argument for the amount of people that will now have access to learn to fight these kind of things, that AI will allow people to learn and to improve their knowledge. And I know that in a lot of cases, people see cybersecurity as reactive because you're just waiting for an attack to happen and then having to contain it. Whereas AI could allow you to be proactive because, for example, like threat hunting, you think of scenarios where how an attack could happen and how to deal with it. And to a certain extent, that just comes down to the human's own creativeness. At the end of the day, it could be the malicious actors are just a bit more creative than the engineers. If you use AI on both sides, I think it could equal the playing field. If you just said that no, you shouldn't use it,
But I think it's also really important to mention that having AI to analyze the code for a certain program, for example, to find certain loopholes where the program could be hacked, that's also AI is there to help to protect certain programs, certain code, to not to be attacked in the future. So
again, these 2 points that you guys made sort of reconnect to what we were discussing earlier about the education system, but now I'm sort of changing it to serve my argument. But I think that the fundamental difference is intent. I have an intent to hack your machine. As you were saying, I think the reactiveness is a beautiful point to make my argument, because it is a reactive approach, absolutely. If you don't know you're going to get hacked, you're not going to put defenses up. And there's no AI out there that's going to tell you, oh, by the way, you should put some defenses up, unless you go out of your way to find it and install it, but it doesn't come built in your machine. Like, do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but I think this is going to go in circles quite a bit, because I think we're arguing the exact opposite of what we're saying. So I think I'd prefer to move on, maybe.
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry to cut you off. Same as last time, for people who have changed their opinion, I would say that this is a time to move to the other side.
I don't think there's going to be a change.
I think the two of us are glued to our seats over here.
Hi everyone, my name is Nabiha. I'm a second-year law student, also in the tech track. I'm very passionate about AI because I think it is developing really fastly, and I think it's something revolutionary, but I do think it has a lot of legal implications that I'm worried about. So that's why I'm really passionate about it, and I want to know more about it.
Let's go!